Good evening, and welcome into another edition of the BF Writers Club right here on Buffalo Fanatics. This is your host, Kevin Syracuse, and we have a special show planned for you tonight because we have a special guest, BJ Payne, the Hilton Head High School football coach. And you might be wondering, why is a Hilton Head High School football coach coming on the BF Writers Club tonight? Well, BJ coached Poona Ford back in the day. So we are so lucky and happy to have BJ coming on with us in a few minutes to talk about. And per usual, we'll have Zach and Bryce coming on, and they will give their thoughts on the Poona Ford signing. We'll recap our interview here with BJ, and we want to hear from you guys as well and see what you have to think. So with that, let's start it right there, as we are live here on Buffalo Fanatics. Happy to have you in with us tonight, as it was another great day for sports. How about the Micah Hyde charity softball event? How about Josh Allen going deep again? I think it was AJ Klein. Josh not do. He did it last year. He does it again this year. You have Greg Mance sliding around like a slip and slide. You had Spencer Brown taking home the trophy this year. So a great day for that. My Yankees blew a 6-run lead, so it was not great of a day for them. And then we had a great game between Boston and Philadelphia. Marcus Smart was just 0.2 of a second short of winning the game for the Celtics and giving them a 3-1 series lead. But Philly prevails, ties it up at 2. A lot of great NHL games going on. I believe, let's see, New Jersey beat the Hurricanes 8-4 today. Last I checked, Toronto and Florida are tied at 2 going into the third. And then we have Dallas and Seattle coming on later tonight at 9:30. Don't want you to watch that, though, because we want you to watch us here on Buffalo Fanatics. So with that, let's talk about Poona Ford, because I love this signing. If you guys have been following along with our coverage here, especially mine, I was very critical of the Bills for not getting a defensive lineman during the draft, specifically a defensive tackle. And as soon as I saw that signing on Tuesday, I was like, okay, that was a weight lifted off my shoulder. I was like, thank you, Brandon Beane, because we've been talking about it right along that the Bills do not have a defensive tackle under contract past the 2023 season. And I know this is just a one-year deal for Poona Ford, but I think this helps the present and the future, because Poona Ford comes in here and immediately helps this year, but he becomes an extension candidate where you say, wow, this guy was still available. He took that discount to come win a ring with Buffalo. Let's see how he does with Sean McDermott's defense here. And we might be able to get him an extension as opposed to someone like a Daquan Jones or a Tim Settle. And that's the other beauty of this. He is that depth and competition where he's going to push someone like a Tim Settle or a Jordan Phillips, who both of those guys did not have the best seasons last year. And you get a guy like Poona Ford in here, and that just immediately makes everything better. He pushes them to be the best versions of themselves. And to me, he slides in as that second one tech behind Daquan Jones. And I think BJ is going to tell us tonight that that might not be the only reason why he's here. He might be climbing the depth chart here, because we have a talented guy on the roster here. And as I'm seeing John say in the comments here, a couple of undrafted guys too, DJ Dale from Alabama. So that also made me feel better when you look at the undrafted free agents. So I'm liking what the Bills are doing here with their defensive line more tonight than I was last week at this time. Now, the other reason why I like this so much, before we get BJ on here, is I think this kind of justifies the selection of Dorian Williams, because at the time we thought it was another undersized linebacker, just 228 pounds. And you say, man, what are we doing here? You just took Terrell Bernard with the 3rd-round pick last year. But you get a big guy like Poona Ford, who is 5'11", 310, 315 pounds, and he is that big space eater to clog up the middle. And here is the thing that I've been trying to stress when I was so high on a guy like Siaka Ika at pick 91 for the Bills, and they ultimately passed on him for the aforementioned Dorian Williams. Now you get that big body in the middle to take on those extra blockers like a Poona Ford, to let these smaller linebackers work out in space and attack the ball carrier and whoever else has the ball, whether it's a passing situation, running situation. For this case, probably a running situation, what we're talking about here. But now you get someone like Dorian Williams and you say, okay, now I understand why the Bills went with a smaller, more athletic linebacker because you have those big bodies up front now to let him do his work. So I think this is a very, very good signing for Brandon Beane and the Buffalo Bills. What's up, Stevie? Glad to have you on tonight. And with that, as we are just 6 minutes into the show here, BJ, when you're ready, give me a thumbs up and we will get BJ Payne on here. He is ready to go. So very happy to have BJ joining us tonight. And BJ, how are you doing from the warm and sunny Hilton Head?
I'm doing pretty well. Being a Midwest guy myself, down here for 12 years now. Yeah, it's warm and sunny. I think it was about 78 and breezy today. So doing pretty well.
All right. Glad to hear that. I must say, after a very cold and rainy last few days here, I'm in Fredonia, but I know it's been like that in Western New York. The next 8 days on the forecast, not a drop of rain in sight. So I was very happy when I saw that on my phone a little bit ago, because we're looking at upper 60s, lower 70s, creeping back up into the 80s. So glad that the weather's finally turning, because you guys probably don't have that bad of weather down in Hilton Head, right? That's a vacation destination.
Yeah, not too bad. I think maybe 4 years ago it snowed. Just
Really?
A couple inches. Everybody thought it was like 4 or 5. But the thing about whenever we get snow or ice down here is there's no plow trucks, there's no salt, so it tends to cause quite a bit of an issue down here, and nobody knows how to drive on it. So yeah, but for the most part, it's pretty nice. I mean, there's been times when I've been hanging up Christmas lights in shorts and flip flops. So it's much better than what you guys deal with and in the Midwest.
So is it one of those things where you get a couple snowflakes and everything just shuts down because no one knows how to react?
Oh, without a doubt. And I had to get used to, my wife and I still talk about it. We have to get used to, there was 2 things that I had to learn about when I moved down here. One was hurricanes and one was alligators. And, the hurricane thing. And, I think there's been 5 or 6 times in our 12 years we've had to be evacuated during that time. But as I always tell people, and this too, is, if you guys get those blizzards, get the big snowstorms, ice storms, when you lose power, you can't go outside because it's warm. Here, at least with hurricanes, if something happens, you lose power. At least when you wake up, it's 70 degrees. So there's a big difference in that weather related.
Yeah, I'm sure you saw the blizzard that we had up here around Christmas time, and that was really bad. That was dangerously. I mean, we lost a lot of lives up in the Buffalo area just because of what you were talking about, just all the factors going into it between the snow and the cold and the no power. So yeah, it's definitely tough to deal with.
Right.
But okay, Hilton Head. I've always wondered. I've never really looked into it until a little bit ago. Hilton Head is in southern South Carolina, right?
It's as south as you can be. We're basically like 20 miles from Savannah, Georgia.
Savannah Bananas.
Yeah, so we're as south as you can be in South Carolina.
Okay, yeah, because I always just thought for some reason that it was like southern North Carolina, but I was like, oh, it's southern South Carolina, because I always go to Myrtle Beach, but I've never made it down that far to Hilton Head. I have a friend that goes to Hilton Head, and I just never realized exactly where it is until I looked on the map, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so Myrtle Beach is about 3.5 hours away from us north, and then like where Outer Banks and Nags Head are, that's North Carolina. So people don't realize a lot of times they just assume it's along the coast, but like us, the Nags Head's like 8.5 hours. So it's a pretty big jog.
All right. Well, that being said, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you down to Hilton Head? You said you're from the Midwest out in Ohio. So what led you down to Hilton Head throughout the years?
Well, I'm kind of an interesting book with plenty of chapters. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, went to high school at Massillon High School, Massillon, Washington, big high school. Former Buffalo Bill, Chris Spielman is from Massillon, and then played college ball at Mount Union. And then I took a little journey that a lot of people don't take. I saw somebody in the comments made a joke and made the joke about I look like Stone Cold. But upon graduating from college, I had my degree, and then I signed with the then WWF, WWE wrestled for 4.5 years for them, had a neck injury, and had to retire. So when I retired, I had my teaching degree and wanted to coach, and went into being an assistant coach at Canton Glen Oak High School. I was there like when Brian Hartline, the offense coordinator at Ohio State and former Miami Dolphin and Cleveland Brown, was there. And then I became a head coach about an hour north of Columbus at a town, a little village called Lexington High School. And then 11 years ago, saw the job open up in Hilton Head. And, you know, it was one of those days where I was just looking out my window and it was 34 gray and rainy with about 6 inches of slush on the ground, and decided to make the switch to look to the south. And you and I talked a little bit earlier. There's a perception and a perceived notion of what Hilton Head is made up of. But when I came down here and interviewed, the principal said, hey, you know, we're a Title I high school. You know, more than 70% of our kids are on free lunch. We're diverse. You know, we're 40% white, 30% black, 30% Hispanic. And if diversity is not for you, please don't waste our time. And I stayed around the school and fell in love with it. Got offered actually 2 jobs in North Carolina, turned them down. I went all in on this job and fell in love with it, and took the job. And Poona at the time was a sophomore Mike linebacker. He was an inside guy. And I'll never forget the very first day I said, who's that? That's my 3 tech. And I promised him if he would make the transition for me and go down to defensive lineman, he would be an All-American. And he was a high school All-American. And then, you know, the rest is history.
You know, before we get into Poona, that's interesting about Hilton Head because, like you said, we were talking about it before. And even me, I always just thought it was a place for rich tourists to go have fun and party and soak up some sunshine. But then when you say it like that, it's like, really? So is it kind of like there's 2 different parts to the town here that maybe a lot of people don't know about?
Well, the thing about Hilton Head is that makes it unique is, first of all, you said you've never been here, right?
Nope.
Okay. So it's very different. It's not Myrtle Beach. It's not Daytona. Everything closes here like at 9:30 at night.
Really?
It's very dark. There's no street lights. That has to do with like sea turtles. That's a whole different story. But when you see some of the big homes here, you know, most of those homes are rentals. You know, there's a place called Singleton Beach. And there's like a line of like 20 different $3 to $5 million homes there. All those homes are vacation rentals. There is some older money that moves here late, but you know, all the job makeup on the island is all tourist related. You know, it's food and beverage, it's hospitality, you know, it's you know, hotels, it's service industry that goes on, you know, pretty much minimum wage jobs or jobs that rely on tips. So when you look at the makeup of our high school and our middle school and our 3 elementary schools, you know, that's what it is. It's people that are, you know, working on the island. It's still expensive to live here. And, you know, they're busting their hump every day to find a way to make it work. So it's very different than what the perception is of the island, of the actual true makeup of the island.
Do you know what the population of Hilton Head is?
Supposedly it's like 26 to 36,000 as far as how many people truly live here year round. I'd say it's less than that, but our high school has around 1,350 kids in it. So it's bigger than many would think. But with our high school, we truly only get the kids on the island. So the kids that are on the island come to high school here. There is one community right across the bridge that feeds into us as well. But besides that, it's just on the island. And we don't have open enrollment or anything like that. So, you know, kids can't just make a decision to come here. You know, we got the kids on the island.
So I went to high school here in Fredonia, New York, and I believe I graduated with 130. So is that a little bit smaller than what Hilton Head is then?
Yeah. So we graduate around 350 to 400 per year.
Oh, okay. So we're way smaller then.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's bigger. Student enrollment wise, it's bigger than most people think. And there's 2 small private schools here. One actually on the island, but it's a K through 12 school, and I think it's about only like 300 kids that go to school there.
All right, interesting. So without further ado, we might as well.
And I will tell you, just so you know this, a little factoid about Hilton Head. It's the second largest island in the U.S., continental U.S., only behind Long Island.
Really?
Yep. Long Island's got us barely beat, but Hilton Head's the second largest island in the continental USA.
The more you know, right?
Right. It's like one of those NBC after school special things. We need that little star floating.
Sorry, I think I cut a little bit there. But yeah, we might as well get into. You got me?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, cool. So, all right, we might as well get into Poona Ford here. So, out to right from the get. It cut out again?
Yeah, now I got you.
Man, I think I told you this before. I had this problem fixed again for the second time, and it's still not fixed. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's all
right. But I guess not. So, yeah, I was just asking, when exactly did you meet Poona, and what stood out to you as soon as you met him right from the get-go?
I met him actually. I met him when I came down and interviewed for the job. I saw him in the hallways, and then obviously when I took the job and my introduction night, I guess, press conference and all that. And the thing that amazed me about him, and we'll touch base and get into this, was he was a very quiet, mild-mannered young man. Really didn't say anything. He's not much of a talker, but just seeing his, size. I mean, he was, everybody talks about his height. I know earlier you said he was 5'11", so we can't cheat him. He was actually 5'11" and 5'8" at his pro day. So I know that 5'8" matters to Poona. But, he was 280 pounds, and as a sophomore, and ended up playing, his junior and senior years for me at around 290, 295. But just his length, his body, his athleticism. He's an incredible athlete. Played basketball, played baseball until he went into just football when he started picking up all of his offers. He's ambidextrous. He can throw the ball with both hands. He is a very unique athletic talent that people a lot of times, just because of how they view him or they see him and think he's, short and squatty, they don't realize all those things about him. I mean, when he was in high school for me, he legit back squatted 675 pounds. His junior year, he ran a 4.8 40 and had a wingspan of, a 6'9", 6'10" guy. But just an incredible young man who, originally thought his future was going to be in the Marines. That's where he was going. And then I got here and we kind of changed that direction and moved him to defensive line. And if you actually go back and actually Seahawk fans love this when he was with them. But if you go back and you go in and Google him and watch his high school film, he actually played fullback and some tailback for us. And was really, really good at it. So he was like Jerome Bettis, being as big as he was with his feet.
Wow. So he's just kind of like that all-around athlete then.
He was. I mean, when he was in Seattle, he won their 3-point shooting contest. And like I said, he can throw the ball either hand and throw a spiral 50 yards. Was a great baseball player, and he's an all-around athlete, but everybody just sees him and says, "Oh, look at him! He's built like a fire hydrant. He's a nose guard." They don't realize how tremendous of an athlete he actually is.
So, what years were this? Because he entered the league as an undrafted free agent in 2018, and he went to the University of Texas from 2014 to 2018. Correct?
Correct.
So you said right when you got there, you met him. So was your first year 2011, 2012?
So my first season was the 2012 season. So that was going into it. So that would have been Poona's junior year.
Okay.
So I got hired in right around January of 2012. And then he played for me in 12 and 13, and then went on to Texas to play in 14.
Nice. So I have to ask now, we might as well ask this right now. Has that been the best prospect that you've graduated from your team, or have there been other guys? Because I think you said that you've coached some other guys that have made it pretty far, correct?
Yeah, I think Poona's the sixth player that I've had to play in the NFL.
Really?
He doesn't have the longest career yet. Brian Hartline, I think, played like 9 years. And then, I get asked that all the time, is who's the best football player that I've ever coached? And that's a tough question. I had Brian Hartline, I had Poona Ford, and then we had a kid who played for me 2 years ago that was a 5-star Under Armour All-American that went to Notre Dame, named Jalen Sneed. And I guess in each of their own facets, they're very unique and dynamic. Brian only played receiver and was a returner. And then Poona obviously played both ways, and Jalen played both ways and was our quarterback as well. So I don't know if he's the best, but if he's not, he's in pretty good company on who's better than him. But I've always been Poona's biggest fan and always will be. And he's very unique. Love the kid to death. And he's probably the best I've ever coached. We used to have to literally like hold him out of practices when we would go one-on-ones. Like, you hear the old stories about Dick Butkus, and they'd have to put a cowbell on him and stuff like that. Like, we literally could not let Poona Ford practice when we went ones-on-ones because we just couldn't get a play off. Like, he would beat our offensive lineman every single play. So we would have to get his reps in and then get him out and not let him play on defense. He was literally that unique. But the funny thing is everybody too was, in the recruiting spaces, how tall is he? So I would take him to the Under Armour camps and the Nike camps, and everybody would be like, that's it? That's him? And then I would just smile and I would just say, just wait till one-on-ones. And then he'd go to one-on-ones and just dominate everybody and go on.
Human wrecking ball, right?
Yeah, he was. And he's so strong and he's so quick, and his length and everything. And in fact, one of the first guys that I talked about with him when it came to the recruiting piece, and I told you this earlier, is a good friend of mine, is Bobby Johnson, who was the offensive line coach for the Buffalo Bills for about the last 3 or 4 years before last year, and then went to the Giants. And I had sent Bobby Poona's film his junior year, and I said, hey, this kid's going to be special. I think he's very unique. And we talked about his size, and the first thing Bobby said was, what's his wingspan? What's his arm length? And then when I explained, told him how long he was, he said he's going to be perfectly fine because, when you get shorter guys, you worry about arm length and them being able to lock guys out. And that was never a concern with Poona. And, he was a high 4-star kid here, a top 20 defensive tackle in the country in high school. And obviously, when you look back, and I actually did it like a year ago, and like I think like only one of the 19 guys that were ranked ahead of him are like still in the NFL. So that made me feel like I was, what I always knew, which is I was right about how good he was. And he ended up, like 40 offers, originally committed to Louisville. And then when Charlie Strong took that job at Texas, it was before signing day. So Poona ended up, reopening his recruitment, and then went to Texas with Coach Strong.
Now, we have a super chat coming in from James, but before we get to that, I want to ask you one more question about Hilton Head and the football program here before we get into more of the details. So is this a program that you built up yourself, or have they always been known for football down there?
I guess that's a good question. So they've always been good, but so what happened right before I got here was, so if you knew the area, what's called south of the Broad. So there's a Broad River that runs through, and then there's I-95. So all the kids used to come to Hilton Head in the 80s and 70s, and it was really good in the 90s. So all the kids from basically about a 25-mile radius all came to Hilton Head. And then they built a new high school, and then they built another new high school. So it drastically changed things right before I got here. I would think that, and what I've been told and what we take pride in, I think the biggest difference has been, getting our guys on to the next level, promoting them, how we promote them within our program. It's a true grassroots approach. We do a summer camp tour with our players. Like this year, for example, we're going June 6th to the 15th to where we're at different college one-day camps for our kids to get recruited. This year we go to North Carolina, Duke, NC State, Wake Forest. Then we go up and go to Ohio State, go to Cincinnati, and then go back to Ohio State again. So we get our kids on the map. We get them out. I mean, we've been absolutely everywhere. We haven't been to Syracuse, but we've been to Pitt. We've been to Penn State. We've been to West Virginia. We've been to Notre Dame, Michigan, Toledo, USF. Central Florida. We've been absolutely everywhere, and our kids tend to go outside. Like I said, as much as people love Hilton Head, our kids want to get away from it, and there's just as much not for a better lack of term, as much bad here as there is good. So our kids tend to get away, and their recruiting becomes true nationwide. We've had kids go to Boston College, Texas, Purdue, Toledo, Notre Dame, Wake Forest. So very rarely do we have kids who decide to stay in state.
That's interesting. So now for the super chat here from James. He says, Kev, can you and Coach explain the defensive line text? Because I mentioned at the outset of this how he is that big one tech, and then you said that you envision him as a three tech. So this segues into more about Poona Ford, the player, and what you saw from him in high school and how that translated into college and then the NFL. So I'll let you do this because you'll probably do a better job explaining it than me. What exactly are the definitions of the different tech, the techs on the defensive line?
So you want it from what Buffalo is from a 4-3 perspective? Or do you want me to cover?
Yeah, we might as well start with that, yeah.
Okay. So in a 4-3 perspective, you play with two interior defensive linemen. One is generally a 1, so he's a shade outside of the center. So he's on the outside shoulder of the center. The 3 tech would be on the opposite guard of the nose guard, outside his shoulder, almost between the guard and tackle. And then you'll have an end or a stand up, or 2 ends on each side. So a 1 tech is usually your nose tackle type, your nose guard, take on the double teams, eat up space, where your 3 tech ends up being a little bit more active. He's your penetrator. So I think in the system, what has been there is Ed Oliver's your 3 tech.
Yep. And I was going to say Daquan Jones has been the 1 tech.
Has been the 1 tech.
Year. And then
so
Ed
typically
Oliver.
you get more of an athletic, I guess, type guy to play the 3 tech, somebody who can penetrate, get up the field, cause havoc. And then, your 1 tech is a guy that's going to eat up space, be a good run stopper, and allow your backers to run and keep them clean. Now, if you go to a 3-4 defense, you have your 0 tech, which is a nose guard, then you got your ends, and then you got your overhangs, and the ends play on top of the tackles. But Poona was a 3 tech for us. We would play him at nose a little bit. When he went to Texas, he actually played both until his senior season. And then they transitioned from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So he went to nose and just played a true 0 tech nose straight up on the center the entire year his senior year. And then when he went to Seattle, he primarily, they were a 4-3 his first 4 years there. He was primarily a 1 tech, but he would play the 3 a little bit. And then last year they transitioned to the 3-4, and for some reason, I don't know, but decided to play him at end. And he's not a defensive end. So, for all Bills fans, don't take into account, anything of his from last year, because he's not a defensive end. Schematically, it was not a good fit, but he did what was best for the team and helped the team there. But it was not a great fit for him as a defensive end.
So when you said that you envisioned him as a 3 tech back in high school, is that a case of just his build? You said he was about 280.
Well, he was so
okay. Back in high school, you said about 280, right?
Yeah, he played between 285 and 295, but it was just how explosive he was. and how his ability to penetrate. And then remember, if you go a lot of times and you put him as a 3-tech, you're going to get a lot of one-on-one single blocks from a guard because the tackle's got to work to the end a lot of times, unless it's a true down block or a pin and pull system. So, but as a nose, you're going to get double teams, and he could beat those, but we literally would just line him up as a 3-tech. And Poona's the only defensive lineman that literally didn't have any responsibilities. Football IQ through the roof, but we just let him go make plays because that's what he did. And I want to think his junior year, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I should. But his junior year, I believe he had 180 tackles, and he had like 42 for loss. He set all kinds of records with those numbers. Then he came back his senior year and had like 160 tackles with like 32 for loss. Just absolutely ridiculous numbers from a defensive lineman. Those are usually like stat padded linebacker stats, and his were all just true stats.
Man, that's crazy. So is that the case where based on his size, you saw him as that 3-tech and just how he fit in your defense, and then he comes to the NFL, puts on that weight, he's got that big body, and you say, okay, now you're that big space, the 1-tech now?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's played some 3 before too. But in the NFL, so many double teams and stuff like that, he could take that on and work with that. But then when he had the opportunities to work, one-on-one, or so many teams are true zone teams, whether it's inside zone or outside, it really causes a problem with him in a 1-tech and that guard trying to scoop him and reach him as he's working down the line, just because of his quickness and his length, being able to post people off.
Yeah, when I was writing the article, I was going through and I was checking the stats, and a lot of people were commenting like he was out of position last year in Seattle. Don't really take into account that because his PFF grade was a 56.2, and he had 3 sacks, but only 35 tackles. So like you said, he was a defensive end last year, correct? Because they went from a 4-3 to a 3-4.
Right. And they basically had him playing a read end. So he was like a big end where he was just mirror stepping and doing that and not able to penetrate. But yeah, and they, even, Pete Carroll came out after the season and said they overplayed him. He played more snaps than he ever had. I know one thing that was, a big thing that his agent really, talked about, with the fit with Buffalo, was that Buffalo rotated their defensive line more than any team in the NFL last year. And so that was one thing too, to keep him fresh and keep him going.
I was going to ask, so how do you see him fitting in with the Bills defense? Because I talked at the beginning about how Daquan Jones is a 1-tech. Poona Ford is immediately that backup 1-tech. But do you think that he could push him for that starting 1-tech position and really be a force on this defensive line here in Buffalo?
I can tell you this is it's obviously going to come down to making plays and everything like that. But Poona doesn't go anywhere, doesn't do anything to be second best. He's the ultimate competitor. He's going to come in there to play. And I think I told you this the other day, he's coming there to start. And, if he is a starter, then he'll earn it. If he's not, then somebody else will earn it. But this isn't I'm signing a contract for a year to come and just, rotate in occasionally. Like he's coming to play football, and he's coming to make a statement and to be a starter. And, it's the NFL. There's a ton of great players, and but that's what he's coming there to do.
Now, have you talked to Poona since he signed the deal with Buffalo?
I have. Poona and I talk almost every day. So we've had a tremendous relationship since the moment I got here. We're extremely close. My daughter jokes, I was telling you this, she says that Poona's my oldest daughter. So yeah, we're really close. Whenever he comes home, he always, comes by the house, and he's absolutely, phenomenal. But, we talked through the entire process, and, we've always have. When we went through the draft process and he didn't get drafted, we talked through all of that. And, the NFL is all about the right fit. And when he signed with the Seahawks, we knew that there was a need there, and we knew that there was opportunity there. he went for less of a signing bonus because, I mean, rookie deals are rookie deals, but less of a signing bonus to go to Seattle, because the point behind that is it doesn't matter what your signing bonus is as an undrafted free agent if you don't make a team. You know, you can do a signing bonus for 25,000 or have one for 50,000, but if you don't make that roster, you know, and you got that 50,000, that's all you're going to make. So everything's always been talked about. I mean, you know, we have a relationship, you know, built on love and trust. And so every step of the way, you know, he calls me, you know, throughout all of it.
So what has he had to say about Buffalo so far? Because Tom Pelissero said that he took less money to come to Buffalo. So what did he have to say about that? And just Buffalo in general, maybe Bills Mafia, the city of Buffalo, and what is he expecting on Sean McDermott's defense?
Well, as far as that goes, it's funny because I told you I read a lot of things on him and on Twitter and stuff like that. I don't think
that's how we met.
Yeah, I don't think he pays attention at all to any of it. But you know, when you know Tom had made that tweet and talked about that, somebody was like, "Oh, that's agent talk." It's not agent talk. Like, he literally turned down more money to come to Buffalo. He knows Buffalo. He loves Buffalo. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit of a backstory on Poona. So Poona, and you can read about this, but Poona was primarily raised by his paternal grandmother. So his grandmother's husband, who was not her first husband, but the one that Poona knows as grandpa, he's from Buffalo. So
Really?
all the years growing up, Poona and his family used to do summer trips to Buffalo. So I get people all the time who ask me, what part of Buffalo? I have no clue. I just know, you know, Buffalo. So every summer he would go up to Buffalo for a week or two. So that was one of the things we talked about when we talked about the weather and the cold and all that. You know, he obviously, you know, he knows what he's getting into there. But he was very excited, and he's excited to be back in a 4-3 defense in which he can do what's his best ability to provide, you know, help and play with, and that's within a 4-3 defense. Now he can play 3-4 nose, but he's not an end. So he's excited about the opportunity. He's excited to be on a team that has a chance to win. That's a big thing for him. I can tell you from Poona Ford's entire life, when I say he's the ultimate competitor, I don't care how much money he's making, if he's a professional athlete or not, winning and losing matters to that kid. And I say kid, he's a 27-year-old man, but I always will call him kid. But winning and losing matters to him. You know, you got some older fans who talk, you know, who remember when Chris Spielman played there. And I grew up with Chris Spielman in my house. Same hometown, you know, best friends with my brother. Same type of mentality. Winning and losing matters to him. His 5 years in the NFL, you know, we talk after every game. But if they win, we talk that night. If they lose, we talk the next day. Because, you know, I know that he doesn't want to talk after a game if they lose. So he's a guy, like I said, the ultimate competitor. He's not going to say 2 words. He's just going to bring his lunchbox every day and go out there and grind.
And that's pretty much the Bills' DNA. So they love guys like that. We got another super chat from James.
Can I jump in on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody said we play a 4-2-5. As far as the front goes, in a 4-2-5, it's the same. The only thing that changes is your number of safeties and backers. So front-wise, it's still a 4-man front, so it's the same.
So James says, Coach, why do you think he went undrafted?
Because he's 5'11" and 5'8". He was not invited to the combine because of that. He was 2-time All Big 12. His senior year, he was the Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. That year, you know, according to everybody, he was the biggest snub of the combine and then the draft. But like I said, it was about him finding the right fit. And you guys have probably seen this through the years is, you know, sometimes it's better once you get past the 5th round, it's better not to get drafted in the 6th or the 7th round, because then you can pick the the team that's best for you. And, you know, we knew he was going to get the opportunity in Seattle. We knew that they needed defensive linemen. Kind of unique story on how it worked. He took a top 30 visit to Seattle, doesn't get drafted, but Seattle's D-line coach, who is now their defense coordinator, is Clint Hurt. Circle all the way back. Poona was originally committed to who in high school? Remember me telling you this? Before he went to Texas, who was he committed to?
Was it Louisville?
He was committed to Louisville. Guess who the D-line coach at Louisville was who offered him?
That guy.
Clint Hurt. So when Charlie Strong took the job with Texas, Clint Hurt left and became the D-line coach for the Chicago Bears. And then Clint transitioned to Seattle. So it was funny because when Poona was deciding between the 4 and 5 teams that he was going to go to, I talked to Coach Hurt, and he said, I told you I'm going to coach him one day. And he was right. We just thought it was going to be in college and not in the NFL. So he went there, made the roster, made an impact his rookie season, and then the rest is history.
Now, did he have any pre-draft visits or conversations with the Bills? Were there any ties to Buffalo back in 2018?
That's a good question. I don't remember much of that. I know where he was kind of, where he kind of narrowed it down to. And it was Seattle, and it was another team in the NFC West, which always blew my mind because I grew up a diehard Steeler fan. Mm-hmm. Even though I have more in my closet, I have more Seahawks stuff than I do Steelers. So now I'll have more Bills stuff.
There you go. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, right. I hear it every day in school. So this is another thing that comes into it. Not the same people as when Poona was here, but our principal, Bills Mafia. Our boys baseball coach, Bills Mafia. Our assistant baseball coach, Bills Mafia. Our girls lacrosse coach, Bills Mafia. Our team photographer, Bills Mafia. Literally. Like our
that many Bills fans are down in Hilton Head?
It's absolutely ridiculous. Our principal was so excited last year when the potential of the game being played in, I believe it was Atlanta, when they talked about the playoff game.
Oh, yeah.
Was going to get moved there like a neutral site game. He was so excited, and I think the Bills lost, but he had already found a way. He was on he had gotten the tickets. He was going. So we have 5 or 6 very serious Bills fan. In fact, a former teacher who had him as sophomore year in English class, who retired last year, just sent me an email the other day about him going to Buffalo and how happy she was, as she's a Bills fan. So yeah, he's going to have plenty of support here on the island.
Love to hear it. I know when I go down to Myrtle Beach, I put a Bills shirt on and people are like, go Bills. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of Bills fans down here because, everyone hates the cold. So we have a lot of snowbirds or people that just live down there full time. So I think you get a lot of us down there.
Well, and the crazy thing is you get a lot of people who transition down here from the Midwest and now New York and now some Michigan too. So you get a ton of people down here, but for a better lack of term, but the old heads here, the people who grew up here that are football fans, they're all Cowboys fans. And that always was a head scratcher to me until one of my assistant coaches who was from here explained to me. He said, look, when we grew up as kids, the Jaguars didn't exist. The Panthers didn't exist. The Buccaneers stunk, and so did the Falcons. The only thing that was on TV every Sunday was America's team, and it was Dallas. So everybody generally in this area, if they were from here, they grew up Cowboy fans. And then obviously we have all the transplants that come here from everywhere else. But yeah, there's a huge Bills restaurant and bar here called the R Bar. Not trying to give them free publicity, but and every Sunday, anytime I go in there on a Sunday, it is jam packed wall to wall with Buffalo Bills fans.
Nice. I have 2 more questions for you, and then I'm going to bring Zach and Bryce on to see if they have anything that they want to ask. And then I want to open it up to the comments. I mean, it already is pretty much open, but before BJ leaves, if you guys have any other questions for him, feel free to fire away and we'll get to them. But my 2 questions are, first of all, I don't know if you can speak on this, but do you know the other teams that were trying to get Poona Ford before he ultimately chose Buffalo?
Yes. I don't know I don't know if he would, want me saying who it was and who it wasn't. I can tell you the other ones. How about can I just give you divisions? Does that work?
I would say, yeah, maybe just divisions or conferences. Maybe you shouldn't say, yeah, it was between Buffalo and Miami.
Yeah. So there was a team in the NFC West that wanted him, and it would have been pretty dynamic with their front. I'll just say that. There was a team in the NFC North that really is the one that really made a late push. And it wasn't the Bears. I know Bears fans on Twitter were just like Bills fans. They all wanted to sign Poona, but it was not the Bears. It was an NFC North team. And there was a couple of AFC teams in there, and obviously his former team. So I think when it really narrowed down to the making a decision, there were 3 or 4 teams in play.
Did you say that was Seattle still interested?
They were. They were. But they were still figuring things out just because of. You cut out there for a second. Can you hear me?
Seattle was interested, or they were ready to move on?
No, Seattle wanted to bring him back, but Seattle's problem is they have major cap issues right now. And, they went out in free agency and signed a bunch of other positions. And, they still got, Adams' contract and a lot of things there. And, and don't get me wrong, he absolutely loves Seattle. He loved the city. He loved the 12s. He loved the coaching staff. He loved management. He loved everything about Seattle. So for him to move on to go somewhere else, it had to be somewhere special.
Well, it's Buffalo and Seattle with arguably the best fans in the league. So now he gets to see the real 12th man.
It's amazing. Like I said, I grew up a diehard Steelers fan, and I never knew. Obviously, the Bills fans are elite of their own, are elite in their own right and in a league of their own. But I was amazed, like you just said about Seahawks fans, is I would always go, see him play. And usually I would see him on the road, when they were playing on the East Coast. And I was amazed at how Seahawks fans traveled. I mean, I was absolutely blown away. I had no clue that they traveled the way they did. It was amazing. Obviously, Bills fans travel everywhere.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the last just quick one that I had for you is going back to his grandma. She was the one that nicknamed him Poona, right? It was actually Pooh Bear.
Yeah.
Because his real name is Kalen.
Yeah. So the story has gotten out about that. So I know he doesn't mind if I share it now. So he's Kalen Ford Jr. Dad is Kalen Sr. But his grandma gave him the nickname of Pooh Bear his entire, from birth on. So he was always Pooh Bear. So it might have been around 4th grade. He was on the playground and she yelled, "Hey, Pooh Bear, I'm here. Come on." And he came over to got in a car. When he got in the car, he told Grandma, "Hey, Grandma, you can't embarrass me in front of the girls like that and call me Pooh Bear." So Grandma said, "Okay, we will make it tougher sounding. How about if I call you Poona? Because you're always going to be my Pooh." So that's how he switched to Poona. And it was funny during his high school recruiting, nobody had any clue. So college recruiters would call me and say, "Okay, now what's his background? Is he Samoan? Is he Polynesian?" Because they saw the name Poona and just assumed. But that's how he got it. It originated from Pooh Bear. And then like in 4th grade, he thought Grandma embarrassed him in front of the girls. So he switched to Poona.
And we might have talked about this, but was he born and raised in Hilton Head?
He was, well, in the general area, yes. So technically he was born in Pritchardville, which is about 30, 45 minutes away from here. And then, but then he was, grew up on the island here and went to Hilton Head schools his entire life.
Nice. All right. Well, with that, you have a few minutes, right, for Zach and Bryce to come on and for any of the people in the chat that want to ask some questions. So
of course,
I'm going to bring them on as Zach joins us, as does Bryce here. Guys, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Definitely more pumped after hearing some of these responses of the questions. I was excited about him before, now even more excited.
I will tell you this for all of you guys. He's going to come in and he's going to be the hardest worker in the room. He doesn't take plays off. If you watch his film, he's the guy. He's done this since high school. You know, he pass rushes, and then when the ball's off, he turns and runs down the field. It's hard to find a defensive lineman who will tackle a wide receiver 12 yards downfield and stop screen game the way he does. That's something that, I mean, he's the ultimate high motor guy that's always going, never stops. So you guys are going to absolutely love that about him.
Now, Zach and Bryce, do you have any questions that you wanted to ask BJ?
Yeah, I have one. So earlier you mentioned that he switched from middle linebacker, I think. Was he set on linebacker, or was he open to change?
Well, so he had been the Michael linebacker, and he was going to be, you know, he had started the second half of the season his sophomore year. And, you know, he was open to the change. I just told him, I said, I promise you, if you trust me, you'll become an All-American. Because I had seen him work out, saw his twitchiness, saw his strength, saw everything that was, you know, about him to be, you know, a Division I college football player, and it was going to be at nose guard or 3-tech. So he trusted me with that, and you know, and it worked, and he had, you know, success right away with it. He was literally unblockable in high school football. You know, I think it's one of those things where, you know, you transition and you see the immediate success, it becomes very easy. But I mean, I'm talking plays first day of spring practice, where literally my offensive coordinator, our offensive line coach at the time, Michael Bailey, one day, it was first day of spring practice, and we had a Division I quarterback and a Division I tailback. Poona was the backside 3 technique. They ran speed option away from Poona. He crossed the guard, the center, the opposite guard, and made the pitch happen and tackled the running back for a 5-yard loss. And that was on speed option. It wasn't like dive option. Like that's how unique he was. And offensive line coach said, "Hey, you know, that was your backside 3 technique that just made that." And I said, "Yes, I know." And I just smiled and walked back. So, like I said, he had immediate success right off the bat.
Let me sneak in real quick. Did he play any other positions, maybe some skilled positions when he was younger growing up? I guess that's another question too. Did he always play football like in midgets, or was he kind of a late bloomer? And if he did start early, did he ever try any position like maybe tight end, wide receiver, quarterback even?
He might have played a little bit of quarterback whenever he was younger, because he can throw the ball. I don't know who the quarterback depth chart is there. Obviously I know the big one, but he'll come in and he can spin it. It's amazing. Reporters are always amazed. They were in Seattle at him throwing the ball like at training camps. But obviously he played fullback and tailback for us. So I want to think his whole life growing up, he was like a fullback Mike Backer. His junior year, then he only played defensive tackle. Then his senior year, we got him back in at fullback and running back. And, you know, he was elite feet, 290 pounds running the ball. So he was pretty special. His senior year, we played our rival. And it was my second year here, and the first time Hilton Head had beaten them in like the previous 10 games. And that game, Poona ran the ball, I want to think, like 11 times for like 70 yards, had 3 touchdowns. And on defense, he had like 5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks and like 20 total tackles. So he's an absolute war daddy. Charlie Strong, Coach Strong, you always call him a war daddy. He's the ultimate war daddy.
Zach, if you have any questions, feel free to jump in here. And with that, chat, I want to hear from you guys. If you have anything for BJ before he heads out here, feel free to post them in the comment section here, and we will get to them after Zach goes here, right here.
Honestly, I like I said, I was already sold on him, and everything that you've said tonight has just made me even more excited about him. I don't really have anything else. I mean, I guess I should say is, do you think he could end up being Buffalo's QB2?
Yeah, I don't know who QB2 is now, but you know, it's funny because he was so stressed his rookie year as a free agent making the team that he actually said, "Hey, should I go play fullback?" And me and his agent kept telling him, like, "No, do not do it." You know? But no, he's just an all around athlete, and like I said, he gets perceived because of his appearance that he's not an athlete, but he is a genuine, true athlete that can do anything and everything. And like I said, you guys are going to look back on this interview when you watch him play next year, and you're going to be like, man, he told us. Like, he is a nonstop motor, turns and runs, chases people downfield. He is the ultimate competitor, and I mean, every play he plays it like it's his last.
I have another one for you. I see James has one here too. Actually, yeah, let's get to James's first because I think we'll like this here. Does Poona like buffalo wings? That could be a deal breaker if not.
Yeah,
and ranch or blue cheese?
I'm not positive, but I'm guessing ranch. And I don't think I've ever seen Poona, turn down any food. So, so yeah, he does like wings. Which, by the way, somebody's gonna have to tell me like the best places to get wings in Buffalo. So, if you could let me know on Twitter, because I'll be up at a couple games. So I've already looked at the schedule to figure out when and where.
I like Barbell in East Aurora. That's my personal favorite, but you can't go wrong. I mean, there are so many good places. Like, even if you want to go, I know people aren't as high on the Anchor Bar, but I think a wing is a wing. They have their tendencies, but Anchor Bar, Gabriel's Gate, Duff's. Is DeAndre Hopkins at Duff's? Is Poona Ford at Duff's? That's a running joke here in Buffalo. I don't know how it started, but whenever there's a big name on the market, people joke on Twitter and say, oh, I saw Saquon Barkley at Duff's today. Like, oh, okay, cool.
Nice. Well, he's up there right now, so he might be at Duff's. Because I guess they're in phase 2 right now, workouts.
Yeah, getting ready for OTAs.
Yeah, so he went up there. I know he went up there, and when we talked, he was going up to sign his contract and do his physical, and did that. And then I asked him. I said, "Hey, when are you coming back home?" He was like, "I got no clue." I was like, "You need me to send you anything?" Because I think I don't think he expected to stay right away, but he did, and he's there now.
Do you know if he was part of Micah Hyde's charity softball event today?
I do not know that, but I do know that Micah Hyde has been in the NFL now for, I think, 32 years. Because when I was a high school coach in Ohio, Micah Hyde was playing, before he went to Iowa. I remember Micah Hyde was, Mr. Everything in Ohio at Fostoria High School. So I think this is year 32 for Micah in the NFL. You got to be pretty good. Yeah. You got to be pretty good to play that long.
Now, that kind of transitions into my question, because I was wondering, do you know much about the Bills defense, and have you been keeping track of their draft picks and free agency signings?
You know what? I really don't. Obviously that's something here that I'll dive into in the next couple of weeks and take a look at everything. I know what's up front in regards to the defensive line. I know that, but I know they lost the linebacker this year. I know they got a couple other good ones that are there. Actually, right across the bridge from us, he just left Buffalo before last season. The linebackers coach.
Oh, Bobby Babbage. Was it Bobby Babbage?
Yeah, Bobby Babbage lives right across the bridge. So Bobby lives 20 minutes from here. And now his son's there too, right?
Is it? Yeah. His son took over, right?
I think Bobby Jr. took over backers. So Bobby used to
think for a second, yeah.
Bobby Jr. used to recruit us when we had a kid named Bryce Singleton. Bobby Jr. was at FIU at the time, Florida International, and signed Bryce to FIU. So I guess there's more Bill ties here that I didn't think about. But yeah, Bobby Sr. actually stopped by our workouts last year. And I tried to talk him out of the whole retirement thing. Like, hey, I think you're going to miss football. Come coach linebackers for me. And he just told me absolutely not. But he's enjoying retirement down here. I think he's golfing every day.
Yeah, the golf has to be nice down there, right?
It is. And that's one of those things about being down here. Everybody's like, oh, you're the head coach at Hilton Head. You must golf every day and go to the beach every day. And I always tell people, first of all, the golf's expensive. But when you live here, you work here, you don't get a chance to do those things every day. It's not a vacation.
Yeah, for sure. Now, going back to my question. So you don't really have to know the Bills depth chart here. So I'll just try to lay it out for you. Matt Milano, one of the best linebackers in the league. He's the outside linebacker, no question. Right. You mentioned how they lost Tremaine Edmonds, and now it's an open competition because they drafted Terrell Bernard in the 3rd round last year. They took Dorian Williams in the 3rd round this year. They brought AJ Klein back. They brought Terrell Dodson back. They have Balin Spector from Clemson. Is Clemson close to you guys?
Actually, it's one of those things where it's probably like New York City for you guys. Like Clemson's actually like 5 hours away from Hilton Head, even though it's in the same state. It's just really hard to get to from here. So like South Carolina is 2.5, but people don't realize like Gainesville, University of Florida is only 3.5. UCF's only 4.5. All the schools in the Triangle, NC State, UNC, Duke are only 5. So all those schools are just as close as Clemson.
Yeah, so the Bills have an open competition for that Mike linebacker position, and that's a big topic of conversation here, especially who's going to start linebacker. Right now, it seems like the fact that these guys, and by guys, I mean Terrell Bernard last year and now Dorian Williams this year, where they take those smaller, more athletic linebackers, and we're like, why are they getting these undersized Mike linebackers? But do you think, tying this in with Poona Ford, that he could be that big space eater to let them in space?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you look at Poona's history and you look back through the years, you know, they had a kid at Texas who played inside backer named Malik Jefferson, who came out, who was an All-American, who ended up becoming a 2nd-round pick. But they had asked Malik in the process, they said, if you could take one guy from the University of Texas with you to whatever team drafts you, who would you take? And he said Poona Ford. And he said, because Poona kept me clean and kept my jersey clean for 4 years and let me run to the ball. And Bobby Wagner has said, you know, the same thing when he was in Seattle, when Poona was playing up front of him. And I think Bobby Wagner turned out to be pretty good. You know, he was a, you know, all-pro, you know, several times with Poona in front of him. But I think that's the case of time. You know, he's very good at, you know, if he is playing that one tech of taking on those double teams and not allowing those guys to release to the second level. And you just can't move him. I mean, you know, I know, like I said, everybody says, oh, he's 5'11.5", he's 310. But I mean, he's a legitimate, you know, his junior year in high school, he squatted 675. You just can't, it's very hard to move him, especially in a one-on-one situation. It doesn't happen, but he's got such a low natural center of gravity and just has natural leverage that people don't have.
Great. Love to hear it. So I see one question here. One of the fans asked, what team did Poona grow up rooting for?
I 100% know that because we still talk about it to this day. I grew up a diehard Steeler fan. Poona grew up a diehard Baltimore Ravens fan. So he grew up a big Ray Lewis fan and Ravens. So when Poona was here, we talked more trash over the phone and through text message when those games would come on. And we still do, even though he's in the league, we still talk trash when it comes time to Ravens Steelers games.
What is the closest team to you guys? Is it Atlanta?
I guess technically Carolina Panthers.
Oh yeah,
3.5. Atlanta's 4.5. No, Jaguars. Because we're only like we talked about, we're as south as you can be in South Carolina.
Yeah, wow.
Jaguars are only 2 hours and 20 minutes from us.
So Baltimore's not like that close. It's just he grew up kind of idolizing those players that you talked
6.5. Yeah. You know, I mean, when you're a diehard football player and you got, you know, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and those guys, you know, pretty good, you know, team. But, you know, he would go into Baltimore would hurt me if he ever went there. If he went to the Browns, it would destroy me. So, you know, originally they were sniffing around a while ago about Poona, and I told Poona, I said, well, you know how this goes. I will always support you, but I will not buy one Browns item to support you. If you went to Baltimore, I could do that, but I could not do it for Cleveland.
No, I was going to ask you in the beginning because you said you're from Northeast Ohio. If you're a Browns Cavs, and or Guardians fan, but I think we have that answered at least for the Browns.
So my dad grew up right outside of Pittsburgh. So I was raised a diehard Steelers, Pirates, and Pens fan. I will cheer for the Cavs. I will cheer for the Guardians, but I will never, never, never cheer for the Browns. And I know what's going to happen is one time I'm going to have, a kid that goes on to play for the Browns, and that's great. I'll wish him well, but I will not buy his jerseys. Like my entire family has Poona Ford Seahawks jerseys. So we will not have, if he went to the Browns, we'll never have Poona Ford jerseys, but we'll have Buffalo Bills ones for this year.
Perfect. And while we wait for more questions, if you guys have anything else before BJ heads out here, feel free to post them in the chat. While we wait for that, why don't you show everyone Poona Ford's cleat?
So with all of our players that go on, they kind of get an area in my office and a shelf. So this is Poona's cleats from when he played at University of Texas, and signed them, and he brought them in for me as a gift. Like I said, I've been very fortunate for our relationship. He's given me, I've got a game worn Seahawks jersey. I've got his Texas jersey, which was actually, almost became a big deal because his freshman year, they played in a bowl game. And as soon as he flew home, before he got to as soon as he got to the airport, he drove directly to my house, knocked on the door, gave me a big hug, gave me his jersey that he wore in a bowl game, and then he went to see his grandma. So then his sophomore and junior year, they didn't make a bowl game at Texas. So I'm sweating it out his senior year thinking this guy's got to make a bowl game or I'm going to have to give him his damn jersey back because he was going to have to keep the one jersey he wore in a bowl game. So luckily they won the bowl game, or they made a bowl game his senior year. I was there for it. And so luckily I didn't have to give that jersey back. So yeah, I've got quite the Poona Ford shrine. His that jersey hangs actually in my living room, right next to my TV. It's right there.
James has another question. He says, Coach, what's the best barbecue joint in Hilton Head?
Depends what you want. If you want wings, or the one that people talk about the most is One Hot Mama's. And then the one that's a really good barbecue place is called Bullies, Bullies, Bullies Barbecue. Highly, highly, highly recommend the ribs there. They're dry rub, but then they got sauces if you want to put sauce on them. But those are the two spots for barbecue. Wings would be One Hot Mama's, and they have other barbecue stuff too. But if you just want true Southern barbecue, it's probably Bullies Barbecue.
And then we have another question here. Which QB in the AFC East would Poona most look forward to sacking?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact answer to that, but if I had to guess on personality types as opposite as Poona, probably whoever is quarterback in the New York Jets.
I was going to say Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know that for a fact. That is just my guess on personality types. That would be the one. Because who else do we got? We got what? Mac Jones. We got Tua. That's it?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's only 4 teams in the East. I'm not being funny. I just don't know this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Josh Allen, Mac Jones, Tua, and now Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I got a feeling it could be either one of the two in New York, but it's definitely going to be somebody wearing green and white. I don't know that for a fact, but that's my professional opinion on who it would be.
Did he have any history with Rodgers and the Packers back from 2018 to just getting he didn't get released, but in the last few years in Seattle, was there any history? Did they meet in the playoffs at all? Or was that before him?
No, they met in the playoffs. The Packers knocked him out. I'm trying to think. Last year was such a blur. They got knocked out by, I guess, the Niners. And then one year they got knocked out by the Cowboys. I was actually at that game. And then they got knocked out by the Packers. I was not at that game because it was in Lambeau in January. So I made a choice, a professional choice on that one. But no like history or anything like that. Nothing like how no history. Like I saw somebody in the comment section. I think last year it got pretty heated with Josh Allen and Christian Wilkins, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Christian,
Every year it does.
So Christian's my guy. So I will defend Christian right now, and I'm probably going to get all the Bills fans to hate me. Christian, so I hold a huge youth football camp down here. That's actually in 2 weekends, May 19th through the 21st. And we bring in 16 to 18 college and NFL guys to work this camp. So Poona has done this camp probably for 8 years. Christian and Dexter Lawrence have done it for like 7 years. So it's for kindergarten through 8th grade. So literally kids come to the camp and they get coached up by Poona, Christian Wilkins, and Dexter Lawrence. But Christian tends to have that personality where if you know him and he's playing for you, you absolutely love him. But if he's on another team, he drives you crazy. Mm-hmm. Ohio State fans still hate him from when he was at Clemson. I know him and Josh had their issues, but Christian's an amazing guy. People can say what they want to and hate his style of play, but like if you watch him, like when he's mic'd up, it's absolutely hilarious. He doesn't cuss. He's like, "Hey, buddy, watch yourself," and he is, he just has fun with the game, and he's a tremendous person, and he's done a lot with our youth here and a lot here. So him and Poona will be together in 2 weeks at that camp because they're both coming back for the camp again this year. So maybe I can get some trash talk between those two going a little bit. But Christian's about to be an extremely wealthy man too. So
yeah,
he's going into year 5, and obviously he came out the same year as Dexter, and we saw what Dexter just got, 4 years, $90 million. And Dex and Christian are best friends. So Christian's somebody had said earlier that, Christian's listed as a D tackle, but he's an end because the Dolphins are a 3-4. But yeah, he's not a nose. Christian's a 3 tech, or he can play end and has that, in his repertoire. But he's had a great NFL career and team captain now for the Dolphins. He's one of the good guys, even though I know I'm probably killing myself right now because with Buffalo fans, but he's a guy that if he was on the Bills, everybody would absolutely love him.
Now, going back to the Aaron Rodgers point, Zach and Bryce, you can probably help me out with this. It was Jordan Phillips who made Rodgers a meme, right?
Oh, yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah.
Is that where his helmet was like halfway off with the chin strap?
Yeah.
Yep, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So maybe Phillips and Poona Ford can team up now and see if they can do more of that. All right, looks like we have one more question, and then we'll probably wrap it up after that because I know you got to get going. James says, "Coach, how much you benching these days?"
Not much. Weights are heavy. We used to have a PE teacher here who was our head track coach who used to be with me. And I used to always, because he was a distance runner, he used to run marathons. So I used to just always have kids, because we always talk about how, just randomly, no matter where you're at, somebody might come up and say, "Hey, what do you bench?" And it's always like, what? Like I'm 47 now. I haven't maxed in bench in 25 years. But I used to always have kids in our classes go up to him randomly and just say, "Hey, what do you bench?" And it was always a great joke between us. So I don't know what I'm benching. I don't have long arms like Poona. I'm built like a T-Rex. I could probably still get 300. Easy. I will tell you this. If you ever talk to Poona, I will tell you this. I am the only guy who's ever gone squat for squat with Poona in a squat rack. I'm the only one who could ever go in there with him. So that's on my badge of fame. That's one of them, is I could go right with Poona in the squat rack.
Nice. All right, Zach or Bryce, do you have anything else for BJ before we wrap this up?
I think I'm pretty good here. I'm all set.
Me too.
All right.
And do you have anything for us, BJ? If you want to ask anything about Buffalo or just the Bills in general?
No, I know that you guys are going to absolutely love Poona. That's all I have to say is, you guys are going to love him. I believe he's going to be wearing 98. So if anybody wants to go get their Poona Ford jerseys, and if you ever want to tag along with something, it started in Seattle. And actually the sports writer and sportscaster, Mina Kime, started it. Mina, works for ESPN, but she's, from Seattle, a big Seahawks fan. But it started the whole Poona Hive thing. So it's Poona's Hive is a big thing and hashtag. So if you look up Poona, you'll probably see a lot of that, or Seattle fans who talked about that. But yeah, like I said, I'll be, on social media, following the Bills now and continuing to, watch him, go through his journey, as a man now through life and football. But you're going to absolutely love everything he brings, strong in the community. He doesn't, like I was telling Kevin, he's not always the media's favorite. Not because he doesn't like media, he just doesn't like to talk. Like he's a quiet, keep to himself, let his body of work speak for him type guy. So if anybody's looking for an outlandish guy in the locker room, he ain't going to be that. He's rarely going to talk, but he's going to come every day to work and to get better and to make the team, strive to that goal of getting that Lombardi trophy.
Well, hopefully it's here in Buffalo because we've been waiting long enough.
Exactly.
I think he froze again.
Are we the only three that haven't frozen yet?
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
so.
do
Yeah.
I have any more? Am I frozen again?
You were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys have any you have any Wi-Fi providers down in Hilton Head that can come help me out here?
Yeah, probably. There's probably plenty of choices down there.
Yeah, like that. I don't know what is going on with it, but hey, we made it through. But that being said, if you haven't already, please smash that subscribe button. Follow all of us here, especially BJ, as we got him on the Bills Mafia train now. Make sure to give me a follow, Bryce, Zach, and like I said, BJ, and see what he's got cooking up down there at Hilton Head. And BJ, thank you again for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. And hope to see you up in Buffalo sometime. Maybe we'll go get some wings together.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be up there for at least, one or two home games this year and, probably see him on the road a couple times. I was already looking at that. So definitely I'm excited to be a part of Bills Mafia now and, cheer for the entire thing. I've always been a big Josh Allen fan, huge Josh Allen fan. So I love the way he plays the game. So I'm excited to watch his journey continue here.
And my family and I are coming down to Myrtle Beach in August. So if I have an extra few hours, maybe I can make the drive down.
You're going to need about 3.5 or 4. I get buddies all the time who are like, hey, I'm in Myrtle, let's have dinner. And I'm like, it's 4 hours away. You coming here?
Yeah, then another 4 hours back. So that's like a 2-day thing then.
Yeah. And if anybody also, you're talking about, social media stuff, my social media is, my Twitter is American FB, like football, American FB camp. And my Instagram is Coach BJ Payne. Payne. I do not do Snap or Facebook or anything like that, but those are my 2 social medias.
And finally, Kyle says, thanks for your time, BJ. Looking forward to what Poona brings to our team. So I think that is a good spot to close off. So just want to thank you again for coming on and definitely enjoyed that chat that we had tonight. And again, for anyone out there, you guys know this if you've been part of the show before, but this is all recorded. So you can go back and watch the playback. We'll have the timestamps on there and we'll chop it up. And if you want any specific parts of our conversation, definitely go back and check that out.
Greatly appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks again and go Bills.
Go Bills. Is there like a tag I need to know besides Bills Mafia and Go Bills? Is there anything else? Like anything you guys say up there?
Yeah, there's a lot. What should we say? I mean, the main thing is if you say hello and goodbye, it's go Bills. So if someone says go Bills, you say, hey, go Bills. That's essentially someone saying hello.
Okay. All right. So now I know that.
That's the main thing. And
All right,
when you
good.
get wings,
That's all I need to know. And I love chicken wings, but I'm not a boneless wing guy. The bones got to be in it. Boneless wings
There you
are
go.
Definitely.
we're just chicken nuggets with sauce on them.
There
You
you
just
go.
ingratiated yourself further into Bills Mafia.
It has to have a bone. And I'm a drumstick guy, but I'll do the flats, but it's got to have bones in it. I don't want chicken nuggets with sauce on them.
Oh, and I will say, beef on wick. You got to try that when you're here too.
Yeah, so BW3s. That's how it originated from there. So yeah, I've had that before.
Okay, cool.
All
So
right,
you got to
guys.
get that and some wings and definitely a couple beers up in Buffalo.
Hey, I'm good. It sounds good to me.
All right. Well, thanks again.
All right.
Appreciate
I
it.
appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right. So once again, that was Hilton Head high school football coach BJ Payne joining us here on the BF Writers Club. Guys, what do we think about that? Because that was pretty cool how that all worked. That was from my article that I wrote where he was searching Poona Ford on Twitter, and then we just ended up meeting each other. And then, long story short, here we are. He joined the pod.
All I know
Yeah, I
is
thought it was-
listening.
No, I was just gonna say I thought it was a great conversation. Got to learn a lot about, what Poona can bring to the team. Where he fits on D line.
Yeah, and I was listening to this, like I knew who he was from Seattle, like as a player. I was a little familiar just in terms of, oh, I've seen that guy's name before. Oh, he looks like he's done some things. But getting to listen to somebody who is so close to him personally and just getting that extra insight into who he is, that was just, I'm glad I was here for it. It was it makes
And
me
we said
super excited.
we said before the show started, yeah, we'll probably wrap this up at about 9:30. Well, I'm looking at the clock now; it's 10 o'clock. So that's how you know it's a good conversation when you lose track of time, and it's like, oh shoot, it's 10 o'clock. So yeah, that was pretty cool to be able to have him come on the show. I mentioned last week how I'm trying to get more guests to come on and spice things up because we're going to enter that dry part of the season, and that was definitely pretty spicy right off the bat.
Yeah, especially the part where I think especially the part where he was talking about how Poona Ford like is a high motor guy and just like he basically what he described about Poona Ford is why I think most Bills fans are excited about him. And also I was just the thing that blew me away was the fact that he actually preferred to be in a place that rotated defensive linemen. Because you would think usually if you go on the free agent market, you want to get as big a role as possible in order to maximize your potential value and whatnot. But guess there is something to be said about going to a place where the defensive lineman will be fresher coming in off the defensive rotation. So like you have Daquan Jones, then you sub in Poona Ford at 1 tech, or you sub in Poona Ford at 3 tech when you want a bit of a beefier run defense, stuff like that. That's just the stuff that really interested me, especially after listening to the conversation.
Yeah, so I put the banner up here. What do we think he brings to Buffalo now? Because, like I said, I think this justifies the draft pick of Dorian Williams, where you get that big body up front to take up that space to let him have free range of the middle of the field and go attack the ball carrier. Bryce, would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's where, the entire NFL is trending towards is these fast and, quick middle linebackers that, can cover, can rush a passer, provide run support, stuff like that, instead of traditional, huge, big bodied linebackers like we had in Tremaine Edmonds for a few years.
Before BJ got back to me tonight, like we talked midweek and didn't hear from him for a couple days. I texted him one more time today and, we set it up. And I was trying to think whether we have him on or not. Like, what are we going to talk about here? And I was thinking about diving into the linebacker room. And I think this is interesting now because, we talked about last week the potential, the possibility of having Dorian Williams as that outside linebacker. And maybe the Bills are going to play some more of a 4-3 because I think it was Zach, you were talking about his stats last week where he had 5 sacks last year at Tulane. So I said, I wonder if they use him as more of that pass rusher while Von Miller is recovering from his torn ACL and you throw out some different packages out there. Maybe they're going to switch in some 4-3 with some nickel. And now 2 days later, they get Poona Ford and now the wheels are spinning again. I'm just trying to think, how are they going to run this defense? Do we see a nickel? Do we see a 4-3? Does Poona Ford clog up the middle? And maybe Dorian Williams gets some more time now because he has that big space eater. And I know you had that in Daquan Jones, but I think there are a lot of different angles to this signing.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. You can never have too many good, big defensive tackles on your roster. Like, you want to be able to get as many beefy guys that can help take up blocks as you possible, especially if you are going to go with the smaller linebackers in Matt Milano, Bernard, or Spector, or Williams, or whoever's going to be starting at middle linebacker. If you're not going to have that traditional sized Mike, you're going to need extra beef up on the front in order to keep the linebackers clean. And like how BJ was talking about how his former Texas teammate Malik Jefferson came out, he was an All-American, and said during the draft process how that if he could take one teammate with him, it would be Poona Ford because he kept him clean. I'm very encouraged by that.
Yeah, I love that quote.
Even if Poona Ford ends up being just on the lesser end of the rotation, like instead of being like 51, maybe he's like 49 or 45 to 50% maybe in the rotation. But even then, if he can make as big an impact as he made his first few years in Seattle before they put him out of position, I think we're going to see a wholly different defense.
Now, James comes in with another question here. And he says, what's the defensive plan, Kev? 4-2-5, 3-3-5, or 4-3-4? So that goes back to what I was just saying. Do we see more of that base 4-3 where maybe they're not playing as much of that 4-2-5 nickel? I don't know. I feel like the Bills are still going to play nickel primarily. Wasn't there a stat that came out this week that the Bills were like 90% nickel? Or am I thinking of something else?
I'm not sure if I saw anything about that, but that wouldn't surprise me. They're primarily a base nickel team. And to be fair, it's because they're good at it. It's because it's hard to take Taron Johnson off the field. He plays bigger than his size. He plays like a linebacker, but in a DB's body. So I don't see them going more base 4-3 because that's not necessarily their strong suit. I think they just wanted to look to try to upgrade, or at least the defensive line, solidify that so that they could potentially make their base nickel defense better. And also bringing in Taylor Rapp would bring in an additional element where if they wanted to do a big nickel, or instead of having two linebackers, maybe you go into what many dub the hashtag thick dime. You bring in Taylor Rapp as that sort of quasi safety linebacker hybrid. But just getting a little more creative while maintaining their strongest formation on defense.
Yeah, and as much as I'm trying to brainstorm some ideas here and say, oh, maybe they use him as more of that 4-3 outside linebacker, try to use him in pass rush situations. I think at the end of the day, like you just said, they are primarily nickel. And even though they're switching defensive coordinators and McDermott is typically more aggressive, I think at the end of the day, they are still going to play a lot of nickel because of the fact that, like you said, Taron Johnson, how do you take that guy off the field? So even though I was just saying, maybe Poona Ford is here to help those smaller linebackers, let's not forget, even if Terrell Dodson wins the job, because this is the way I see it now, where when the Bills drafted Dorian Williams, at first, Brandon Beane said, yeah, we see him starting out as a backup outside linebacker who's going to contribute on special teams. But then as time went on over the next couple of days, he said, well, we still see him as a Mike linebacker, but maybe not yet because this is more of a complex system here with the Bills than what he was used to at Tulane. So eventually, hopefully he works his way up to being a middle linebacker. So that's why I'm thinking maybe that is why they brought AJ Klein back for one more year. And maybe that is also why they brought Tyrell Dodson back, where they said, you know what, Dodson, I know you tweeted your goodbyes, but how about you come back for 1 year? Because we don't know, obviously, that we're going to be drafting Dorian Williams. But if he's there, we're very high on him. Hold the fort down for a year, be that bridge gap, and then he can take over. And I know Dodson and AJ Klein are way bigger than someone like a Dorian Williams or Terrell Bernard. But the point still remains that you want to get that big one tech like a Poona Ford to make things easier, because regardless of who wins at starting Mike position, it's going to be a transition from Tremaine Edmonds, and there's going to be a drop off. And you want to do as much as you can to help out that new middle linebacker.
Yeah, I think regardless of the player size, having a one tech who can having multiple one techs or multiple players who are capable of playing that position who can take up double teams on the defensive line will just make your defense that much better.
John says, "What's up, fam?" James says, "Small crowd, John." And then John says, "Everybody's in church." So sometimes my numbers don't update here. It says 38. Do we only...
Is he gone again? Or is it just me?
He was. No, he was gone.
How many are in the chat
Kevin,
right
you're
now?
back.
I'm here. Whether you know, so Bryce, what do you think about this whole discussion about what the Bills defense is going to look like next year in terms of the nickel, the 4-3, the different packages, all that good stuff?
I think we do still run mostly, the nickel package like Zach said, but I think there will be some more base 4-3 built into it too, because you brought in all these players where now you can be more aggressive and get to the passer instead of being so conservative, with running 90% nickel, or I think that's what you said earlier, with Taryn on the field. But my only thing with running more bases, there's not three linebackers on the field or three good linebackers where we can start three and, be content with keeping Taryn off the field for so many plays a game.
And something else too, we talked about in the past how the Bills gave up 172 rushing yards to the Bengals last year in that playoff loss. And they were without Daquan Jones. And then you look and you say, well, we really don't have a one tech behind him. Well, now look what we have. Two big run-stuffing defensive tackles. And that's another reason why I love this so much, because if one goes down, you still have another. And Jordan Phillips could probably play that role too.
And one thing I'd like to point out too with Poona Ford is Coach Payne brought out earlier that he can play some 3-tech-2 and rush a passer, which I found interesting because, Ed Oliver's in a contract year. So if he outperforms Ed Oliver, you could always ship him off and, put Poona Ford in that 3-tech position.
Yeah, and like I was saying at the beginning of this show tonight, Poona Ford immediately becomes an extension candidate where you say, wow, this guy was on the market. He wanted to come here. He gave us a team-friendly deal. Let's try to get him back next year. We'll be able to give him some more money. And now we don't have to feel so inclined to have to re-sign Tim Settle or Jordan Phillips or even like an Ed Oliver.
And he's only 27 years old too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Zach,
that's the main thing about Poona Ford too, is like we all love Daquan Jones, but Poona Ford is younger. He's 27. I'm not saying, don't get rid of him just because Daquan Jones is over 30. If he's worth the contract, extension, give it to him. But that's the thing with the defensive tackle position this year. Like you said, like has been parroted about ever since the draft, is that the Bills don't have any defensive tackles under contract past this year. I mean, that's not even really the worst thing in the world, because that either means, one, everyone's got to prove it. Two, they have a plan. They're going to extend somebody or a couple people. Or three, worst case scenario, you just reset your position group. At this point, though, I think that also it was a position they didn't really need to do much at. They were obviously content running it back with the DT room and just bringing in an extra one tech. And I think that will work for him this year.
See, like they were good there depth-wise this year, but I was just so shocked because Bean always talks about winning now and in the future, and he didn't do anything to help win in the future. So yeah, they were good this year, but I was very, I don't want to say scared, but I was having that in the back of my head where I was just like, what are we doing? What's the future plan here? But now I
It's
feel better
because-
after this signing.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing there is like people saw that, every defensive tackle is on a 1-year deal and everyone's prisoner of the moment. So but this doesn't happen in a vacuum. Just because everyone's on a 1-year contract now doesn't mean that they don't have any plans to re-sign anyone or that they're not thinking about the future. Evidently, you bring in a guy like Poona Ford who has NFL experience, but is also still 27 years old and can play that one tech role. Again, he gives you a potential future option. Like you said, he could be an extension candidate. I feel like they're going to want to let him get on the field first before doing that, but who knows? I mean, I'm sure he'll do well enough where he warrants an extension.
All right, well, I want to switch things over to talk about another veteran that the Bills signed this week, and that is Latavius Murray. This is another signing that I really like for the Bills. Running back wasn't that high on my board, whether it was for the draft or free agency after they signed Damian Harris. But you know what? If this is a new version of Tywan Jones and Duke Johnson, then I like it because that is a big improvement.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, Bryce.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I'm going to take a different approach here than you, Kevin. I'm not a huge fan of the signing. He's, 32 or 33 years old. So it's basically, in my opinion, just going to be like another Duke Johnson signing last year where, everyone got super hyped for it. Didn't really do a whole lot in preseason and just ended up being a practice squad guy for the entire regular season.
Zach, what do you think about this signing?
I think that Latavius Murray is a NFL veteran who is another kind of more similar to Damian Harris in skill set than he is to Cook or Hines, in that he's like a downhill runner, more like a power back. And he's veteran depth for that. But also he's productive veteran depth. Like, let's put it this way. He was on an NFL practice squad, but then he got called up for a game, balled out, and then immediately got signed by another team. So there's a reason he's hung around this long. I'm trying to pull up his stats real quick. That he's had at least 500 rushing yards every season but one in his career.
And that was his rookie year.
Yeah, his rookie year, and he was close. He's had 8 consecutive years with 500 plus rushing yards. Yeah, as John Herring in the comments said, Murray is a wrecking ball. Yeah, it's true. He's thrived in that sort of RB committee. Like, his best year even came in the RB committee when he had I think it was his breakout year in his second year in the league. I forgot whether it was 2015 or 2015 was his breakout year. Okay.
With the Raiders.
And yeah, with the Raiders. But yeah,
I'm not even going to try to do that because I can't even come close to Berman. He's unique.
Yep, Berman.
Yeah,
who can do that justice.
But yeah, Latavius Murray, looking at his career stats, 1,481 career rushes for 6,252 yards and 55 touchdowns. So he's not RB1, he's not even RB2, but he is just that consistent veteran who can always give you those tough yards. He can give you, 5 touchdowns a year. And again, I like to sign him because I don't think running back was a position that the Bills really needed to go after. And I found it interesting because Brandon Beane said on One Bills Live that he actually signed Murray during the draft on Saturday. And he said, hey, we have the contract all ready for you. If you want to sign it, we'll get the deal done right now, and that way I don't have to draft a running back with my few remaining picks. And that's definitely interesting because I did not want the Bills to draft a running back. I just didn't find a need for it when there were other needs like defensive tackle, defensive end, right tackle, and all the other positions that we talked about. So I'm glad that this worked out because I would much rather have Latavius Murray on a cheap veteran deal and he can be, again, that Duke Johnson where maybe he plays, maybe he doesn't. But Damian Harris has had a lot of soft tissue injuries over the years. And if you need that power back, there you go. Call him up from the practice squad or activate him on game day.
I will say this because I know Duke Johnson's been thrown around in comparison to Latavius Murray. I think I'm going to disagree with the whole aspect of, oh, you can easily get him off the practice squad, call him up. Because, again, last year, he was on a practice squad, had one of his good games, and then immediately got signed by another team. So I feel like, and this will be an interesting discussion that we have over the next couple months. So it's like, oh, do we carry 3 running backs? Do we carry 4 running backs and have one inactive? I'm not sure you can easily get Murray onto the practice squad because, again, he's been consistently productive. And like you said, Damian Harris has had soft tissue injuries. You're going to want that extra depth, even if it means just keeping him on the back burner, which I think if you want to have your 4 running backs, there you go. You don't have to worry about bringing Taiwan Jones back. You can find another special teamer, and you just have 4 quality running backs.
And let's not forget Reggie Gilliam, too. I know he's more of a tight end, but, he's listed as a fullback as well.
Yeah, fullback, tight end. Yeah, Reggie Gilliam's Reggie Gilliam. He will always have a place on this roster.
What was it? The Vikings game last year, did the Bills carry? Yeah, they carried 6 running backs last year because they had, let's see, Singletary, Cook, Hines, Duke Johnson, they activated him. They had Taiwan Jones and Reggie Gilliam, if you want to include him. But they had 6 guys who could run the ball. And that was a point that I've been going back to, that they had 6 active running backs, and they only ran the ball 7 times in the second half and overtime while they were nursing a 2-touchdown lead. So I didn't understand the motto during that game. So if they can carry 6 guys who can at least handle those handoffs, then I think they can figure it out this year. And maybe they go into a game with 4 running backs because you don't have to worry about Taiwan Jones clocking up that spot anymore.
Yeah, at the moment, I mean, again, I will never rule out them bringing their special team boy back, but Duff taxes Taiwan Jones on special teams, but I think their priority this year was just trying to get more quality depth in that running back room. And again, you can be confident going into the season knowing you have 4 capable running backs. But most likely they might just make one of them a healthy scratch based on matchups. And that's fine. That's the way they want to do it. That's fine.
Now, John says we're not going to be able to keep Murray on the practice squad. Someone will poach him. And while I agree to a point because I feel like Murray's one of those guys where when you go through your final cuts, I don't think teams are going to be out there saying like, oh man, Latavius Murray got cut. Let's go pick him up. I think it's going to be one of those situations where a team runs into some injuries halfway through the season, and then you say, oh, now let's go poach him. So I think you have to be careful with it because to start, you could probably keep him on the practice squad, but as you get further and further down the season, you're going to have more injuries pop up, and that's when teams are going to try taking him. Isaiah Hodgins was a little bit different because the Bills didn't have room for him last year. Maybe they did. They kept Jake Kumaro, whatever, different conversation for a different day. But Hodgins had a lot of upside, and the Giants saw that. They needed help in the receiving room, so they went out and they took him. This is a different situation where there's not a lot of upside here. We already know what Murray is. He's hit his ceiling, but again, look for injuries to come into play here. A team like Baltimore, right? Their running backs can never stay healthy. So give it till week 5, and the Ravens are going to say, hey, let's go get Latavius Murray off Buffalo's practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, that could very well be how it ends up, where he initially gets cut and put on the practice squad, but then eventually they have to make a decision on whether to just move him up to the active 53-man roster or let him go to another team. But I believe this was also kind of popped up on One Bills Live when, or I thought I heard it on the radio when they were discussing Latavius Murray signing about that think it was in relation to Duke Johnson last year, where like teams may have broached him about being signed to their 53-man roster, but he wanted to stay in Buffalo, so that he actively chose to stay on the practice squad. I mean, obviously, I don't know what Latavius Murray's thought process is, but I believe that, that's always an option. But I think best case scenario, you might just want to not even take the chance. Just keep him on your roster. Worst case, he's a healthy scratch. Best case, you have your own running back injury and you have the next man up right in the building. You don't have to worry about poach attempts.
And another thing about Murray is that he is from the Syracuse area, and he had I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was his best friend who died years ago, I believe. And the thing, but he was doing some great community work this past weekend. That he's been to Buffalo once, which is kind of hard to believe because it's not that far away. But he said he drove by the stadium years ago because his mom had a doctor's appointment in Buffalo, and he was like, "Wow, that's where the Bills play." Now everything comes back full circle, and he's back in Buffalo.
Bryce, you got anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just still struggling to figure out where, Latavius Murray fits into this offense. And, if you do keep 4 running backs, which position you're going to take away from. Because right now you're looking at a lot of depth on O-line, depth on D-line, wide receiver, and corner. So I don't know if you want to really take away a good player from one of those positions to keep, Latavius Murray on your roster.
Well, this is going to be interesting because I think we're going to have a few shows from here on out where we're going to predict the 53-man roster, because I feel like it'd be interesting to do it now and then again in a few weeks and maybe again, like definitely in August. But I feel like it'd be cool to do it a couple times because these conversations are going to keep popping up, and I feel like it's going to change because right now we might be really high on X player, but then we go through OTAs and training camp and it's like, oh wow, this guy really showed up and showed out. How are you going to cut him? So I think we're going to have to definitely dive into that because I've seen some people do that already on Twitter and whatnot. And there are going to be a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made because this is a very full and stacked roster where other teams are going to say, wow, this guy got dumped by the Bills. We could pick him up and he could be a starter where they didn't even have room for him on their 53.
Yep, the Bills are definitely one of those teams everyone's going to be looking at who they cut.
But I will say for now, let's see, I think it was John who said it. He says, my big thing is I need to see James Cook, a full-time starter, carry the load. And yeah, and then we have another comment here. 2 speed/receiving backs and then 2 power rushing backs. And I think that's pretty much what the Bills are doing right now, where Murray is that insurance for Damian Harris, and then you have Cook and Hines. This is a conversation for a different day, but just quickly here, since we're talking about it, and Bryce, since you were saying you don't really understand what they're doing with the depth chart, is James Cook RB1 or is it Damian Harris?
That's tough to say because Buffalo's never really had a true RB1. And, even going back to Georgia, James Cook has never really been, that workhorse back where he's taken 200 plus touches a year. So I do think James Cook is the best running back we have on our roster, but I think it's going to be Cook 1A and Harris 1B.
Zach, would you agree?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that especially because, again, the Bills the last few years have just been running that sort of a running back by committee type approach. I mean, Singletary was on paper RB1, But then there were times where he would come off the field for stretches and they would put Zach Moss in or put Hines in or put Cook in. So I don't see them all of a sudden just going to James Cook and saying like, hey, we're going to give you 300 carries. Good luck. Have fun. Like, there's a
Especially
reason
when he can do so much more on
Harrison.
offense.
Exactly. And especially because now they signed Damian Harris, they signed Latavius Murray, who is also another capable veteran back who could be a steady hand should you need him. And as somebody mentioned, I believe it's the same, I believe it was J-Dub, one comment below, he said Hines is going to be mainly a returner. That could very well be the case. Like, that was what he did mainly last year. I'm sure they're not ready to give up on him totally on offense, but I don't see them all of a sudden now giving him like 150 carries this year and like a significant receiving role as well when you have James Cook there too and all the different passing options, especially after the draft.
No, I don't think he's going to get 150 carries or maybe not even 100, but I think he at least has to be a part of the offense because you sent Zach Moss and a 5th-round pick to Indianapolis for this guy to get him 11 touches last year, and that's unacceptable. So it doesn't have to be 111, but it's at least got to be some upticks from last year.
I mean, to be fair, I always thought that trade, even after seeing he only got 11 carries, I still thought it was worth it just because they got stability in the return game. And I think that's about as valuable as getting rid of Zach Moss. Like, so I would have no problem if he ended up just being mainly the return man, but also the backup pass catching running back. I think they may try to use him more in that gadget role we saw, but actually it would be nice if they used him when he was in the gadget role this year, as opposed to just putting him out as eye candy and immediately everyone knowing, oh, that's just eye candy. They're not using him.
Well, I said 11 touches. It was actually 6 rushes, 5 receptions, and that gave him the 11 total touches. So they acted like, oh, he's going to be a weapon for us on offense, and then it's just like, never mind.
Well, we don't necessarily know what happened in the building. Like, it could have been maybe he wasn't picking up the playbook.
Well, that's what they say, yeah.
Or maybe it was just, maybe they didn't have the game plan set up where he would be used that way. I mean, we know that, remember that second Miami game where he had the receiving touchdown off of I think it was a Miami blitz and he was just wide open or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I feel like when you get a running back committee, it's hard to get more than 2 guys involved. So we'll see what happens. But again, I'm not ready to say that trading for Hines was a bust just because he was only a special teamer.
All right. Well, Bryce, any final thoughts on Latavius Murray or just the running back room in general, or maybe something else that we talked about tonight, didn't talk about, any position groups as a whole? I mean, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, we could talk about right tackle, but just anything else that you want to add before we sign off here tonight?
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to the whole Nyheim Hines debate. I just think it's super tough to get him involved in the offense when, he worked out so well in the return game, and Buffalo has never really used a player super heavily at both positions. Going back to Isaiah McKenzie, Marquez Stevenson, those guys, they've never really had a huge role in the offense while doubling as a punt and kick returner. So that, maybe had something to do with only 11 touches last year.
Oh, I have one more thing. Again, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but the NFL schedule comes out on Thursday. Do we have any predictions about what we're going to get, how many primetime games, any road games that Bills fans are going to be, prepping to travel for? As we wrap up in the final 5 minutes here, what do we think about the NFL schedule coming out Thursday night?
I mean, I will say that the Bills should probably get the same amount of primetime games they had last year. I would be interesting to think about the potential for that first game, that Thursday night game to kick off the season, because Kansas City's going to host it. Could we potentially see Chiefs Bills week 1 and the Bills open up on the road on Thursday night again? Could we potentially see them like on primetime week 1 against Aaron Rodgers or something?
I think
Maybe
that's more
Miami.
likely.
Who knows? Yeah, I feel like we'll see a primetime game against Rodgers at some point.
They've been playing Kansas City like every October, it seems. So I feel like they finally have to put a game in December, and I feel like they flip-flop with Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to be that early game, September, October, and then it'll be November, December, maybe even January for that Kansas City game.
Yeah, we could see that. Or we could end up just, again, 3 years in a row, death taxes, Bills, Chiefs, and Kansas City in October.
At 425.
Yeah. Which is, well, to be fair, that's like sort of like the perfect balance between generic 1 o'clock, which I still love the 1 o'clock slot, and primetime, because primetime games are usually too late. 425 it's all right. It's a happy medium there.
Yeah, those are the most viewed games.
And I also think it's worth noting too that I think this year the Black Friday game starts too. So I wonder if we get a game there too.
Oh, that's right.
I don't want the Bills on the Black Friday game. It's just going to be like 3 p.m. on a Friday. Like, can we exile?
And we are getting the London game too, so.
Yeah, the London game, yeah, we all know that's going to be a 9 a.m. game on a Sunday, which, well, means you just have the
Gotta wake up early.
have the Bills pregame show and whatnot a lot earlier.
Got to cut the beers off a little bit earlier on Saturday night. What was the other thing I was going to say? We were talking about the London game. There was another team that I was going to throw in there. I can't think of it now.
Were you going to mention something about Philly?
No, but we do have them, right? Is that a road game?
Yep, that's an away game. So is Cincy. Play the Chargers on the road. We are hosting Jacksonville, Dallas, Raiders, Broncos, Giants. Oh, Bills, Giants. That's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Do we see
Dable?
Do we see like maybe a potential primetime slot for Dable's return to Buffalo?
Does Tyrod start? That'd be interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how the schedule pans out here.
Yep, and I'm sure. Let's put it this way too. We're hosting Dallas this year, so I was gonna say something about playing them on Thanksgiving, but no, guess that might not happen.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say, Zach. When you said you don't want to see the Bills play on Black Friday, I was gonna say, well, that's when Ed Oliver does all of his shopping.
No, that's Thanksgiving night's when he does his feasting.
True. But that whole weekend, it seems like Ed Oliver loves it. So maybe they put the Bills. Can you imagine another Thanksgiving game too?
I mean, it's bound to happen.
Yeah. It'll probably end up being that Thursday night game then, because like I said, they don't play Detroit this year and Dallas are hosting. So.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for tonight. Pierre says, great show, guys. Appreciate that, Pierre. And, I got to show you guys this. Look what came in the mail. My BF pillow, which is kind of hiding down here, but I had to at least show it off because I ordered it on March 29th, and I was hoping it was going to be here for the draft. So then I looked at the email, and I was like, it says it's shipped. Where to go? Literally the next day, it's on my front porch, and I was like, thank you. So I got that. I'm pumped about that. I added a few more pictures to the wall. I'm working on a few more. But, hey, better late than never, right? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was right.
I was just reading chats.
All right. Well, with that, one more time, if you haven't already, numbers might have been down a little bit tonight. So make sure you smash that subscribe and like button. Give me a follow at Kevin_Syracuse, at ZVaughn2712, and at Bills by Bryce, and at the FB Analyst to give us all follows. Make sure you're following Buffalo Fanatics and all that good stuff. Now, next week, we will be covering the results of the NFL schedule. So, Bray says this is dope. Well, it's going to be even doper next week because we're going to be able to make some predictions based off of that. And, you know, we'll probably have a large amount of the show be, hey, what do we think the Bills' record is going to be? Because that is going to be a hot topic next week. And then we'll get into some more off-season topics from there. So once again, this is Kevin Syracuse, Zach Vaughn, and Bryce Martino on the BF Writers Club on the Buffalo Fanatics Network. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and watching part and spurred because we had a great conversation with Poona Ford's former high school football coach, BJ. I just almost blanked on his name, Payne, but I was thinking of another name. But yeah, we had a great conversation with him. So make sure you check that out. And we will see you guys next week, same time, same place. It's Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.